Welcome to All Things Breastfeeding. This is Barbara Robertson from Lacto Learning, and I am joined with my co-founder Nancy Moorbacher. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Barbara.
Well, Nancy and I have been working on Breastfeeding Answers, third edition. So we've been deep into studies, and of course, Nancy and I are always interested in the latest PubMed results and things like that. And so you found the study. I found it at the same time, but you really emphasized it about growth spurts. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen quick
Okay.
to let everybody take a peek at it.
Yeah, and for those who are listening on the podcast, you can read the name of it because if you have the title, you can put it in PubMed and bring it up. It's an open access article, so you can read the whole thing.
Right. And so it's called infant growth spurts in the context of perceived insufficient milk supply.
Mhm.
And it was published in Nutrients. It's December 11th. It was published, what, a few weeks ago, Nancy?
Uh-huh,
This one? Yeah.
2024.
So very recent.
Hmm.
And it's just very interesting because it takes a subject that I think a lot of people have thoughts on and many people believe is a real thing,
Hmm.
and it works on trying to disprove. It doesn't say what it is, but disprove. So let's talk about growth spurts and what
Hmm.
parents think growth spurts are. We all
Okay.
use this term, oh, growth spurts, growth spurts.
Yeah, I think mostly parents think about growth spurts because they hear about it from,
Hmm.
providers. But, growth spurts, like in the 40 plus years that I've been working with, breastfeeding families, the way we've always talked about growth spurts is that they explain why small babies go through periods of very intense nursing. We often said like at 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks are common times that babies who were maybe nursing a little bit more that they were following a pattern. The
Right,
pattern goes out the window and the baby just wants to nurse like crazy.
right.
So we've often explained these in terms of growth spurts, that maybe the baby's growing very quickly and they
Uh-huh.
need more milk, and that's why they're doing this. So that's been an explanation that's been given for many, many years and decades, I would say.
Yeah, and let's be clear, we're talking about like 1 to 3 days, right, Nancy? We're not talking about like a week.
Mhm.
It's usually,
Right.
I find 1 to 3 days where the baby just kind of wants to be at the breast almost constantly or every
Right.
hour, every 2 hours.
Right.
When, as you said, it had kind of settled into a rhythm, which
Mhm.
felt like, okay, yeah, we've arrived. And then
Right.
we go through this intense time.
Right.
Um, and I had always been told that, oh, this is when the babies are growing so fast
Uh-huh.
that they need to increase the milk supply. And
Right.
that's why they need to nurse so much.
Right.
Um, and then you and the authors too, what families end up feeling like is they don't have enough milk.
Right.
So talk about that.
Well, I think for families who maybe are not talking to providers about this, I think
Mhm,
there's just an immediate assumption that when a baby starts nursing like this,
mhm.
that somehow they don't have enough milk. And I
Right.
think many families just start supplementing when this
Mhm.
occurs. But for those who actually have support people that they are in touch with or who talk to their providers about it, often they're told, oh, well, this is just a growth spurt. In other words, there's not a problem with your milk production. This is just what babies do when they're growing quickly.
Right. Just ride it out. It will be
Mhm.
okay. Just give the baby access to the breast
Right,
and it will be okay.
right,
And the it's true.
right. Well, what is true about this is that this is very common behavior
Mhm.
in young babies, and that if you just, as you say, give babies unrestricted access to nursing, then it will sort itself out, and breastfeeding will be fine. That it does not necessarily require supplementation.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Because as soon as you start supplementing, then you're actually undermining your milk supply
Right.
and you're making things worse.
And of course, with parents who worry about their milk supply, the thing that they need to do is maybe get a weight check,
Hmm.
because if the baby's gaining weight in the expected range, then obviously they're producing enough milk. So in other words, you don't go by the baby's behavior. You use a
Hmm.
more objective measure to know if there's an issue.
Absolutely. And as you measure, I mentioned this is very common around 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, give or take.
Right.
And then usually we don't see it quite so much then later on,
Right.
but
So
super common.
So I was very interested because the authors of this study wanted to look into the literature and see what there was about it.
Hmm.
Because they were suspicious, I think, is
Yeah.
one of the reasons they looked at this. And they pulled like 120 articles, but as they read through them, really only six of them
Hmm.
addressed, this issue. And what they concluded after their review is that there really is no evidence to suggest that the reason that babies behave this way is because of growth spurts. There's just nothing in the literature that confirms this. So I think, at the end of the article, they ruled it out as a
Hmm.
reason for this very common behavior. So, they acknowledge the behavior is common.
Hmm.
And they basically said, you know, providers often say this as a way to help keep parents breastfeeding.
Hmm.
But wouldn't it be better if we had a more accurate way
Hmm.
to describe this, that's based on fact? Because clearly we want to give evidence-based responses, and saying that it's a growth spurt is not really based on evidence.
Right, because when they looked at the study, they found no evidence of increased intake
Right,
and they found no evidence of increased weight gain.
right,
So
or
the
growth.
babies, oh, growth, right. So the babies weren't actually growing faster
Right,
and the intake wasn't increasing.
right, right.
The behavior was the only change.
And so, as I've seen, I know you pulled a study that really talks about babies' intake.
Yeah,
We
I'm going
can
to go
look
ahead
at,
and pull that up
yeah.
now
But
too.
one of the things that I've been turning to in recent years is, rather than using the term growth spurts when I talk to new parents, it's really more about frequency days, because frequency days is a term that we used to use decades ago also. But I think that really accurately describes the behavior.
Mhm.
But it doesn't give a false explanation for what's going on. So let's see, if you scroll down a little bit more, there's a table in there that shows actually the milk. It gives you numbers instead of being,
Okay, because I was like, here's a scatter plot.
yeah, there you go. That's what
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Um,
So,
yeah.
so
And so
this,
can I just comment though,
go
on
ahead.
what you were saying? I love the idea of frequency days or
Hmm.
days where the baby's feeding frequently. Because that is actually what is happening.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily growth spurts. Yeah, so when we look at this data, so this is the age in months, we
Right.
see at the average daily, maybe, and this, how many babies? This was a lot of
This
babies.
was almost 20,000 babies.
This is a lot of
I
babies.
don't know if you want to go back to the first page so that people can see what this study is. But it was published in 2023. Here we go. It was in
Yep.
Breastfeeding Medicine, and the title is The Volume of Breast Milk Intake in Infants and Young Children, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. And it actually looks at daily milk intake over the entire first 2 years, which
Yep.
is great because I think we often get asked the question, how much milk should my baby be taking at this age? And maybe it's a 7-month-old or a 9-month-old or whatever. And we really didn't have that information to share until this study came out. So it
Yeah.
goes all the way up to 24 months. What is an average milk intake over a 24-hour day in a nursing baby?
Well, and I think that we have this idea that, oh, it goes up and up and up.
Right,
And
exactly.
750 mLs is 25 ounces.
Right.
And so you can see it really peaks at around 25 ounces.
Yeah, 4 months there.
Yeah.
But
And
actually,
then,
there's not even a
yeah,
huge difference. Like from at 2 months,
no.
2 months to 6 months, it's pretty much
Hmm.
plateaus. There's not a big difference in milk intake. And this idea, I think that as babies get bigger and heavier, they need more and more milk is a bottle feeding norm. I mean, we can argue about whether it's normal. Many
Well,
of
it's
us
not
think,
healthy.
right, many of us think
Common,
that babies
but
who are
not healthy.
bottle fed, whether it's human milk or formula, are often
Yeah.
overfed.
Yes.
But we do see that babies who are bottle feeding often do take very large volumes. And when they've compared bottle feeding babies with nursing babies, they do find that bottle feeding babies take a lot more milk. But that's not necessarily healthy, as you say. So
Yeah.
this would be considered, I think, the norm of
Hmm.
what babies should be taking.
Hmm. Well, and that's where, other things like paste bottle feeding, and people, is this exclusive breastfeeding? Are these people who are
Yes.
doing pre-post weights? Is that how we're getting these numbers, Nancy?
That's a good question. It's been a
Okay.
while since I've read this particular study.
I believe
Um,
that that is what was going
I
on.
believe so, yes.
Yeah. And so we're weighing babies before they eat and after they eat and looking at what do they actually consume.
Right. But I
Um,
think that the main point here is if you look at the numbers, what you see is those during those early months, the first 6 months or so,
mhm.
there really is not much of a change in
No,
terms
there's
of how
really
much
not.
how much milk a baby takes in a 24-hour day. So this
Yeah.
idea of babies going into growth spurts so that they can boost the milk production, so you're making more milk, as your baby gets bigger, is not really borne out in fact.
Yeah. Well, and this is all an issue. The reason that these authors are so concerned about this is because concerns about insufficient milk supply is the
Yes.
number one reason
Yes.
families wean their babies.
Absolutely. Or start supplementing. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
the number one concern among, nursing families
Mhm.
is my baby getting enough milk? And oftentimes they take perfectly normal behaviors and then assume that they're
Mhm.
not getting enough milk and start supplementing. That's very, very common.
Yeah. And so they wanted to just, talk about these frequency days, and I do love that term, as they happen, and
Right.
we don't need to panic.
Right.
Yeah.
We
Well,
know that
let's,
this is normal behavior for young babies, but we
yeah,
don't really know why, although many people have theories.
yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the things that we've been thinking about because, Nancy and I, we think about these things, but if we don't have solutions,
We lactation obsessed people
yes, we've got a
think
little
about these things.
problem. And so what's your idea about what's going on with these days?
Well, I kind of wonder, and again, I don't have any proof of this, but I wonder if at these certain stages after birth, if the mother is actually starts getting distracted by other things in her life, it's like, oh, the baby's 3 weeks old, maybe I can do a little bit more of this or that. And then maybe the milk production, starts to drop a little bit, and the baby's like, no, 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 wait, come back, and wants to nurse like crazy to bring it back to where it needs to be. So
Mhm.
it's not that the baby needs a lot more milk, but maybe it's kind of an adjustment that occurs as the focus of the nursing parent moves away from the baby
Mhm.
in different ways.
Well, and especially around 6 weeks and around 12 weeks, the baby is becoming more aware of the world themselves. And so
Hmm.
maybe they are not thinking about nursing quite as much as well. So it could
Right.
be a combo.
Could
And
be.
something I've thought a lot about is that we know that around 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, we have hormonal shifts. And so we're making that shift from the autocrine system to the endocrine system, or the other way around, endocrine to autocrine,
Well,
hormones to supply and
the
demand.
autocrine starts like at 3 days
Yeah,
because that's the local control of milk
right.
production. The hormonal part is really just in the first few days are like a critical time for that.
Right. But we know that the hormones drop around 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks again on average.
Yeah, I'd love to see a study on that because I've not ever seen
Well,
that.
that's what Lisa Marasco says. And I trust her at this
Okay.
point.
We'll ask her for the study.
Yeah. Well, so my thought is, well, maybe if those hormones drop, maybe the babies need to work a little harder. The
Mhm.
milk ejection is not quite as
Mhm.
robust as it was. And
So they
again,
use,
this is a theory.
yeah.
Who
So they're
knows?
using the autocrine or the local control of milk production to make adjustments as needed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
could
that's
be.
that's my personal, thing I've been
Okay.
playing around with in my head. But
And
again,
hopefully at some point we'll find out what the actual reason
exactly.
is, what's really going on. We all know that it's happening. We all know that
Right.
it's common. We all know, and this is what we need to communicate to parents, that these behaviors are not a sign of low milk production
Yeah.
necessarily. So again, if a parent is concerned, this might be a good time for them to go in for a weight check and see if their baby's gaining in the expected range. And if the baby is, then that means their milk production is fine.
Yeah.
So rather than assuming the worst, check on it and so
Yeah.
that you don't have to worry.
I think a little anticipatory guidance,
Mhm. Yes,
letting families know this could be
absolutely.
coming, this
Right.
is normal. If you have concerns,
Right.
then come on in and let's get a weight check and let's see
Yeah,
what's going
in
on.
an ideal world, all providers would be giving parents the same information that,
Right.
oh, yes, this is normal behavior. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily a sign of low milk production. Let's
Right.
check the baby's weight and see, and then, they could make decisions on a real basis, on something that's really happening rather than somebody's fears.
Exactly. Well, when you posted this on Facebook, people were like, "Yeah, but what's really happening?"
Yeah, that a lot
We
of
do
people were,
want, we want an explanation.
yeah, they were saying, well, okay, so they've said it's not because the baby is having a growth spurt. So what is it exactly? And that isn't something we could answer at this point.
Right. We don't know the answer, but
Right.
again, the take-home message is we know this behavior is normal.
Right.
It is not an indicator of milk supply, and letting families know this is the critical thing because again, they are beginning to supplement, they are beginning to wean because they are so afraid that they don't have enough milk.
Right. They make assumptions that it
Mhm.
is a sign of low milk production, and that's something that we can hopefully counteract when we interact with families.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Nancy, for joining me and let's talking about this article.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
thank you for listening to our podcast or watching this video. If you are interested in more about breastfeeding education, check out lactolearning.com and all things breastfeeding. You can find that on your favorite podcast listening device. So, thanks again for joining us.
Bye, everyone.